program is part of the Scene Project's podcast network. The Scene Project features interviews with independent musicians, comedians, and artists from across the Midwest. Become part of our community and support local art wherever you are. Well, welcome into a very exciting episode of The Scene. I am your host, Bubba Startz, and with me today is Zach Mitchell from the Broken Worship Podcast. Zach, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me, Bubba. I'm really excited to be here.
I'm thrilled to have you. Big fan of your show and everything that you're doing. So before I start gushing too much, why don't you tell us a little bit about, your backstory and how the podcast got started?
Yeah, I'm Zach Mitchell, and so how I kind of started Broken Worship was I really started getting into the Sioux Falls entertainment scene or whatever. I was a vocalist of a metal band called Rebuild the Fallen. We were a band for a few years. We put out a 5-song EP called Outcasts, and then we ended up playing like 10 local shows, which was a lot of fun. But we kind of got older. We had our own things going on, and I still wanted to pursue my mission of my passion of music, of my words and making an impact for others. And I'm a Christian, so I try to point people to Christ. And I saw, as I was in especially the Sioux Falls metal music world, a lot of people they have a hunger for community and for love, and a lot of people felt rejected from Christianity and all that because of church trauma or judgment. And I felt called to share God's love and truth in a way that is not represented very well in all. Not that all churches are bad or anything, but I wanted to spread Jesus's love in a way that I felt I could do a good calling. So before the podcast, I wrote this book called Broken Worship, which is a collection of poetry. I did that and did some did a couple poetry videos, and then so I ended up doing so I got 6 books. I got Broken Worship, No Darkness and Light, Imperfectly Spreading a Perfect Gospel, Ground to Stand On, Saving Grace, It's Not About You Anymore, and My Faith Will Not Be Safe. But anyways, within after I did 2 books, I started I really got into the podcast world. I like Joe Rogan and some Christian podcasts too, and I felt like I wanted to start something that specialized with music and with spreading God's love. And so, yeah, that's kind of how it got started. So
That's a beautiful story, Zach. Obviously, you've been called by God, right? You wouldn't be given this voice and all of these words coming through you and this mission if it wasn't a calling. Nobody wakes up and goes, you know what? I'm going to go counter to the mainstream, especially in this day and age. It's not a great time to be a Christian and to be an outward Christian, especially, even to the point where I know on at the Golden Globes or whatever it was, that they even made a graphic out of it of how, they thanked the producers and they thanked these people and God 0 times and made a joke about it. And I thought, how disgusting. And I didn't grow up in a church, Zach. I want to share my journey to Christ with you. I've always been a spiritual person. Whether I came there through a psychedelic experience or through any of that, it was really my time in prison, right? My 2 years that I spent in prison, and getting in the word, and then getting in a church and being in the full gospel because I wanted to play music, getting into the full gospel band and being a part of that community, and having a beautiful pastor, Pastor Jan, who allowed me to walk my own path. I did her Bible study course, and she was very adamant about not, she was just in the gospels, right? It wasn't Old Testament stuff. It wasn't Proverbs and all the other things. It was just the gospels. It was just the teachings of Christ according to the disciples and the gospel, right? So it really brought me to, a lot of these things and a lot of my thoughts on what the church and Christianity had been distorted by my perception of what other human beings' perception of it was, and what they had built around their own churches, right? And obviously we've all seen the massive mega churches and all of these things, and the powerful speakers on stage, and the praise, and the speaking in tongues, and all of these things. None of that resonated with me. I found God in a prison cell. I found God and I found Jesus, and that love, that Christ love, right? That agape love. I found that all alone in a place where I had been shuttered away from society, right? So I have a very deep and personal relationship with who I call God. And my God doesn't have to be the God that you say lives in that building. My God doesn't live in a building. How
Yeah.
small thinking. What human could, how, and I hate that I say he a lot, right? Because we're so silly, and I personify this energy and this feeling like God is some man in the clouds, right? What a ridiculous thought. God is energy. God is love. Love is energy, right? And that's my journey. And I say that this podcasting is how God is speaking through us every day with people that I don't even know if they're Christians, right? And I don't necessarily care. And I don't necessarily care that listeners of this aren't Christians, and aren't don't have the same beliefs in what God is to me. I know in my heart, not in my mind, in my heart and soul, who God is to me, what God is to me, what Christ was teaching us. And without getting down some rabbit holes of the 33 vertebrae, and the kind of, what it could mean. I do believe that Jesus was a real person, but I also think that it was only because it was a physical embodiment of something that they couldn't, that God, that this energy couldn't teach us otherwise. And what a great job it has done, right, to give us these things. I just think that anything that is of man can be corrupted by man. And that's why church in the kind of, the mainstream sense of it, never resonated with me. It was never big enough to encapsulate what I believed in as God.
Yeah, when you're speaking about prison, it brought me back. Last week I was talking with a vet, and we're friends on Facebook, and he asked me, I'd like to sit down and talk with you sometime because I have PTSD, and like I I he wants to have faith, he does, but he's lost it. And he just asked me like, where would you start in the Bible? And I said, I think the most important thing is to well, I said, it's a big book and there's a lot to it. I would say just start with the words of Jesus. And I also said, you know, you've obviously lived a lot more life than I have. I've had my struggles, but um, I said it's all right to be angry with God. There's a story in the Old Testament where um where God allowed someone to wrestle with him. Not that he God was going to lose or whatever, but he allowed I believe that God wants the real you. And I think I I try to call Christians to go back to the fundamentals of the greatest commandment, which is loving God with all that you are and loving your neighbor as yourself. All the all the God all the commandments are summed up by that. It's pretty simple. We less of us and more of God, and so that's where I'm at. So
The Native Americans of the land that we live on, right? The ancient peoples, the ancestral peoples of this place that we now call home. You know, I'm in South Dakota as well. They say Mitikuye Oyasi. And the natives over the entire breadth of the United States and probably into Mexico as well all have very similar sayings, very similar in the pronunciation of it, right? So this thought that we are all related is what it means, right? That thought is not something that came from the Christian faith, right? That was already there. It was, and that's beyond just human beings. We are related to the animal nation. We are related to the plant nation. We must treat this Mother Earth the same way that we would treat our own children or our own mother or our own father, right? And something that you hit on there is that it's okay to be angry at God. It's okay to be angry. It's figuring out how to transmute that energy because God is energy, right? And the longer that they try to disprove God with science, the more that they prove the existence of God through science, that it's okay because God is not up here. Anger is such a visceral human emotion, right, Zach? We feel it, and it's a thought, and it's a thought. But God isn't up here. God is right here. God is inside of our heart. God is inside of our spirit. It is around us, and that's why we are taught that it's okay to be angry. It's figuring out through these teachings, how do you transmute that energy? How do you bring that energy through the whole walk of Christ and then throughout the top of your crown and through these things and to transmute that energy back into love? That is what God is. That is the walk of Christ. That is the teachings of Christ. And not that I'm some preacher or anything, but I'm out here walking it every single day. And I'm just having conversations with my friends. If someone else wants to listen to this conversation and be moved by it, then that is their own personal journey, Zach. And that's what I love about you're writing these books and you're on the podcast and you're sharing your story and you're sharing all of this. You're sharing God. This is how God is speaking. This is how God is healing the world through technology and through these things because each one of us sharing that expression of God, right? We are all, if we are all built in that image and that likeness, then we are all required to share our experience with one another so that we may know God. We may know God through knowing each other.
amen. Yeah. There's a lot of truth in that. Um yeah, I definitely agree. So
And I already knew that, right? And
yeah.
we do know that because we are walking in this. You wouldn't have this podcast and be putting yourself out there if you didn't believe that to be true, right? You're not going to go and start a podcast talking about broken people and broken faith and people who have lost their way but want to call. You wouldn't do this to get famous. You're not in a podcast to make some kind of name for yourself. You're doing it because you're called. Obviously, Obviously, and I'm saying this without ego to it, without any of that nonsense, because we are walking in it, Zach, every single day. I have multiple conversations and I jump in these different groups and things. I am not planning any of this. I am merely waking up. I pray on my altar, and my God might be different than yours. My God doesn't require me to go to a church and to use water to bless myself with a what are they called, the genuflection, right? My God speaks through sage and Palo Santo, and the smells of and the sights and the feeling of my altar, and in those quiet moments, and in my reading of my books, and I've read all the words of the Christian Bible. I would really like to learn Greek and to be able to read the Bible as it's been brought to us now in the original Greek texts, right? And reading a lot of this, because I think so much of it gets lost in translation. And that's why we have, even those who call themselves Christians, right, and who have gone to church their whole life, I believe that's why some of them have strayed so far away, because the language has been corrupted, right, to make it seem as if these words mean something that they don't. And it's why the Christian faith and the words and the KJV may not speak with everyone, because they've been corrupted by the thoughts of man and not necessarily by the words of God.
Yeah. So I've experienced miracles from God. I I was born with a speech impediment, and I wasn't even supposed to be able to speak. And but my parents' faith and hard work, I went through speech therapy, and I went from like my professionals trying to tell my parents to teach me sign language to I was screaming on stage in a metal band, and now I'm sharing my words through my poetry and writing. So I believe in miracles, and I do personally believe in the God of the Bible. But I know so many people fall victim to self and and to like selfish ways. We see that in the corruption of government, in the all the wealthy business leaders, ego, and I think I truly try to live my life loving God and loving people. I think it's as simple. It's not easy, but it's simple.
Right, right. The path is very hard, but it's very simple. And it's hard because of our human traits. It's hard because of ego. It's hard because people don't like to take accountability for their own actions and their own choices. And they're so it's very hard to get out of their own way, right? It was very hard for me. Zach, I've been alive for 38 years. I'll be 39 in May. It took me a really long time to work through this. I haven't been in prison for 8 years, right? 9 years. It's been a long time since I was there. And I'm just coming around to a lot of the knowing that I've gained has been in the last few months, because I see miracles every day. And I think that everyone sees miracles every day. What everyone has faith. What makes you think that you're going to wake up every night when you lay your head down to go to sleep? What makes you think and what makes you believe that you are going to wake up? Faith. Nothing other
Amen.
than that. Nothing other than that can make you have that feeling that if I lay down and I close my eyes in this place and I stay here, that I am going to be here when I open my eyes again. What is that besides faith? So when I hear someone say that they don't have any faith, well, that's just not true. And if you're going to lie to yourself every day and to live that lie and to operate in that thing, well, it's going to take some time then to undo all of that, to get to a place where you not only have faith in the greater God that's around you and surrounding us, but that you would have faith in yourself to be that same creator for your own life. And that's really the teachings of Christ, is that, yeah, not only do you have to have faith in God, but you could create all of these things. Why are you asking me for miracles when you could do them yourself? That's what Jesus was trying to teach them. Why do you keep asking me to perform miracles for you when you yourself could go do them? You are capable of all of these things that I am capable of. I am not any different than you. I am man as well. You are sons of God. You are daughters of God. We are all God.
Well, and I think well, my biggest I Jesus taught and showed humility and self-sacrifice, and um, I believe, and this is lacking in the in a lot of Christianity. We're not seeing humble pastors. We're not seeing humble. We're seeing churches get richer, try by getting more and more people in, and um, we're not seeing a bunch of self-sacrifice. Putting your lifting up your neighbor. We're trying to make ourselves as rich and famous as possible, and we see in this Christian nation, we're seeing a lot of egos. So
Well, and I think that it's very easy, and people are going to look at us, and there's going to be people that watch this episode and be like, how dare they listen to the blasphemy of these
yeah.
people. He said he was God. No, I said we are God. If you listen and listen with your heart to the words that are coming out of my mouth, these are not my thoughts. This is what has been taught to us. And I'm not telling you things that I know up here. I'm telling you things that I know right here. I'm telling you things because it has happened to me. It happens to me every day. Zach, I'd love to share a quick story with you. I go on long walks every day. That's kind of my thing. I like to walk 2 miles at least a day. That's kind of the goal. And yesterday I woke up way too early, and I was up at like 3:33 a.m. What a fantastic time to arise in the morning. But I went for an earlier walk, and I had a friend contacted me, and we were just talking on the phone, and the sun was yet coming up, and I didn't make my usual turn, right? I didn't make the loop that I usually do. I just kept going. And as I'm walking and I'm looking around and I'm checking my surroundings and I'm checking the clock, because I like to be there when my wife and children leave in the morning so that I can hug and kiss them. And I was kind of like, man, we're getting pretty far away. Like, we better turn around. We have to turn around soon if we're going to, make it back. I was thinking I could make a different loop, and that path wasn't quite there. And I looked down, and I don't know if you know, like the little garden, that not a sculpture, but like a little metal, ornament, right? And Zach, I looked down, and there's a little metal butterfly on the road, right in that space. And I said, well, then it is definitely time to turn around. And those are the signs. And Zach, I got back to the same place that I always watch the sun come up on my regular walks. And right as I got there, the first rays of the sun are cresting the horizon. And I arrived back home with 10 minutes to spend with my wife and children. And like, those are miracles. The acknowledging those as miracles is the very basic step. I have had my life physically saved. Physically saved. Zach, I was doing 80 miles an hour. I'd been smoking meth for days on the way back from Reno with 20 pounds of pot in the back of the Tahoe. My passenger asleep in the passenger seat with me. And I went off the road. I woke up when I hit the rumble strips. I came to as I hit the rumble strips, and I had just enough presence of mind to not overcorrect the wheel and to not go through the reflector, but to just miss it. And the reflector clipped off my side mirror. My side mirror that's this big, Zach. I should have been dead, but God saved me that day. And I wasn't smart enough to listen to him then. I made it home. I sold all that pot. I made a bunch of money. And you know what I did? I was trying to go right back there. And I had been home smoking meth the whole time then for another couple of days, right? And I had left. I had left town, Zach. I had already left. Well, I got to Gillette, realized I didn't have my debit card, went, we got to turn around. Turned around, came back, smoked some more meth, left. It was at that point on the way back out of town that time that we were pulled over. And I didn't have all the pot on me then. I was going out to pick it up. But God said, child, if you won't listen, then I will make you listen. And he sat me down. And even then, I didn't want to listen, right? Even then. And when they came and raided my house a few days later and they found 5 pounds of pot and some more, wax, right? The concentrates and they I thought I was going to jail then, right? I'm in my kitchen going, take me. They said that's not how it's going to work. They left me. And out on bail, I sat for 4 months, while they were like, oh, well, he'll turn in some meth dealer or this or that. I didn't know any to begin with, but it's not in my place to command someone else's journey in that way. And I went to Mexico, and I was in Mexico for a year. And God allowed me to go on that journey so that I could be humbled, so that I could go see how people in other areas were living their lives. And obviously, if you don't know about Mexico, but they are very Catholic, right? They are a very religious, culture and peoples. And I was humbled by the love that we were shown. We should have never. I was treated with the greatest grace that I've ever received in my life by these people. My son was born there. My daughter was conceived there, and it was at that point that God told me that it's time to go home. It's time to go back, and you need to go and to be. Now that you've been humbled, you need to go settle your debt, and you need to go and fix your life for the sake of these children. And I didn't know then that he was setting me on this path now, but I do now know that this is my path to walk, right? And I say that it's to start a million podcasters because I believe, Zach, with everything inside of me, that this is how God is speaking. God doesn't speak with a great voice from above and say, listen to me. No, he sends other human beings. He sends other expressions of himself that you will listen to and that will speak to your heart to heal you so that you may go and heal others. And that's why I'm so incredibly proud of you. And I know we're just meeting here right now, but I'm so incredibly proud of you for living in this. You've been living in it your whole life, and you've been sharing it. These books that are coming through you, you are a vessel. And podcasts are the vessel to take this message out to the rest of the world, right? And I admire you and I respect you and I love you so much for what you are giving to the world. And you are a lighthouse, right? You are a beacon in a place that most people, especially in the community that you are in, right? In the metal music and being in those places. But even when you were there, that you realized that people were hungry for God there. They were hungry for community. They were hungry to not be alone.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Well, thank you. And you have an incredible story as well. You going from meth and almost losing your life to now you have a podcast award winner. Like that's so. Thank you for what you're doing.
Well, we
So
haven't won yet, but we got nominated. And even that, Zach, feels really good. So thank you.
yeah, I just I I feel blessed. We met, we got inter, we met or became connected from my last podcast episode with interviewing our mutual friend Sean, and then I you opened a whole new world for seeing for me about fellow little podcasters, and so that's really encouraging. And I want to just thank you for what you're doing as well.
Zach, why don't you tell everybody how they can find all your stuff? If you got a website where the books are available for sale and the podcast and everything, why don't you go ahead and tell us all how we can find you?
Yeah, so I have a website which is the easiest way to find things. It's www.broken-worship.com. My podcast is available on YouTube and Spotify. And on the Broken Worship page, it has tabs to the podcast. It has tabs to my spoken word poetry videos. It has all the books available as well as Broken Worship merch. And on there, it has a contact tab if you want to reach out and talk with me. I'd love to hear your story as well as anyone listening. So thank you.
Zach, I'm incredibly blessed to know you and to be friends now. And anything that we can ever do to help you on your journey, you feel free to reach out to me. Okay, buddy?
Thank you. I'm definitely excited for our starting our friendship. So thank you.
Zach Mitchell, thanks for being part of the scene.
Thank you.
Thanks for tuning in to the Scene Projects Podcast Network. We appreciate you listening. You can find more at thesceneprojects.com. Join our community.
Got an ocean full of love that's made for two. We can sail upon the ocean breeze and